moved back home, kind of started over. I was just turning 40 years old. I had two young kids. Again, I was opening up the paper and I'm like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And then my wife brought me the magazine, People magazine, I think it was, when Colorado first went legal. And I was like, "Wow, okay, this is something's happening here."
Welcome to the Dispensary Marketing Podcast, where we interview the top dispensary owners and experts in this space so that you can stay up to date with the latest trends and strategies that you'd otherwise miss out on. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Aram, thanks for hopping on the Dispensary Marketing Podcast. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Great to be here.
Awesome. So for the audience, can you please tell them who you are, the name of your store, and where you're located?
Sure. My name's Aram Stoney. That is my real last name. Big Sur Cana Botanicals is our retail store. We're located kind of right at the next to Carmel by the Sea in California here, and kind of at the gateway to Big Sur. So.
Nice. So what was your life like before getting into the cannabis industry?
Yeah, wow, that's it's a loaded question there, right? What was my life like before? Well, I like to think that I've always kind of been in the cannabis industry in a way. I turned 52 this year, so if you want to do some math and go backwards a little bit, I've been around a little while, and I really first kind of was introduced to cannabis, at a pretty young age. I know I had, I didn't. My mom and her boyfriend, I remember walking through the fields, if you will, at the house, and subsequently having the raid come through. So I mean, there's a lot of stories there, but um, there's a lot there. So I'm not sure how far and how deep you want to go with that, but out of high school, I went into the hospitality industry, in the Monterey Peninsula. It's agriculture and it's hospitality, and it was natural just kind of to go into that. Cannabis was always there on the side, more as a supplemental, if you will. And, we can really go back to the pre-Prop 215 days and flow into the Prop 215 days, which I didn't really catch on too early when Prop 215 came around. I thought all my friends were crazy when they started growing in their backyards and putting the green crosses out on the lawns and waving at the helicopters. We were still hiding in the bushes, if you will, and so I never really caught on there with that. I guess my paranoia was at an all-time high, and to be honest, I kind of got out of it for a while.
Okay.
At one point, excuse me, and decided that a couple close calls and it wasn't worth it anymore at that time. And I did move out of state for a few years, and when I came back in around 2012, I guess, I picked up our local paper, and I noticed I was just kind of like, wow, wait, there's people are advertising like deliveries on the back of the paper. I sort of missed this whole little upcoming of what people were doing. And what I noticed was that there was nobody local in our area really providing that service, right? And Brandon, if I'm jumping ahead here, I know you asked me what I was doing before, but there's a lot there. So
No, please go ahead. I have a lot of questions already, so please go ahead. Tell your story.
So anyway, I guess I'm leading into how I started Big Sur Cannabis.
Yeah.
Which really is where it's flowing into, and I moved back home, kind of started over. I was just turning 40 years old. I had two young kids, 6 years old and 4 years old at the time, and like again, I was opening up the paper and I'm like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And then my wife brought me the magazine, People magazine, I think it was, when Colorado first went legal. And I was like, wow, okay, this is something's happening here. And again, noticing there was no local representation, I called up my buddy John, who's a bit older than I am, and really was one of the best growers in the area down here. And him and I had that working relationship, aside from our friendship. And we grew up surfing here, and surfing and weed kind of went hand in hand back in those days. And called him up and said, "Hey, I think there's something here." And at the time, I was actually working as a valet at one of the local resorts here. And I see the general manager now occasionally, and I let him know that, hey, thanks for allowing me to start my business in your bell closet. I'd be answering the Weed Maps calls, from the bell closet. But it just I looked at a way having a young family. I really wanted to go about it in a way that limited my risk, right? And so called up a local attorney who at the time was kind of at the forefront of cannabis legal, the legal aspects of how we had to do it for Prop 215, and we incorporated and we can go on. I mean, then there was a moratorium put on by the county, and just a whole lot of stuff in there. So I'll let you throw some questions at me. I could keep rambling on.
No, please look. Complete side note on the podcast. Like, I always start off with this question, and it's the same question with every guest, but each guest has a completely different story about how they got into this space, right? I might have mentioned it before, but whether you're the grade 10 biology teacher in 2014 in Denver looking to open up a dispensary, or you're the go-getter younger entrepreneur that decides to sell his condo and live inside one of his stores, right? I've kind of heard it all, right? And I'm just personally fascinated with like the journey of kind of doing the thing, if you will. Like, just even from a business owner standpoint, I think a lot of times, when you look at people doing marketing, they're like, yeah, start a business, you get time freedom, financial freedom, all these different things. But when I like ask like how people got into this space, it's like, it's not like you wave a magic wand and then boom, your life is so magical. You're almost working even more and making even less when you first start, get started, right? And it's really interesting to see the types of like character traits, if you will, that decide to keep on moving forward. Because, like, just being a business owner in general is very, very tough, right? And then I always say, if you want to be a cannabis business owner, it's like even more and more and more and more and more tough, right? So please go ahead. I find this stuff super fascinating. So
Yeah. All
go
right.
ahead.
Wow. Where did I leave off? I mean, I'm kind of jumping around a lot. I guess again going back in time. Again, always being part of the cannabis. I don't know. I guess the statute of limitations. I can't really incriminate myself going back, say, 40 years. But
Yeah.
there was a point when it was wow. I can buy a quarter pound for X amount of dollars and supply it to my friends and support my own my own pleasures, right, with that. And that's kind of where it started, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to an old journal um, that I had to write in, I think, eighth grade English class, and the topic was, if you were given $10,000, what would you do? And I
Mm-hmm.
actually still have that journal. It's a way in some Tupperware somewhere, but I came across it in a recent move, and I was like, oh my god, my whole little story was about buying like a pound of weed, and going from there. So I think it's just always been part of what. I guess part of my what I was supposed to do. And again, people always laugh at my last name and say it was meant to be, and maybe there's a lot of truth to that. But again, as I already said, as the years went on, I just stayed mostly local with that. And my business partner now and good buddy John, we developed that relationship at one point, and carried that on. And then, like I said, a couple close calls back in the hills that sort of just kind of made me pause and say, yeah, is this worth it anymore? And I took that I kind of stepped back, and well, many of my friends kept going strong, and then I said I moved away for a few years, came back, had that whole the People magazine, my wife, and noticing needing the local part of it, and so when we incorporated Big Sur Cana Botanicals in 2014, I guess. So that would be 10 years ago now. And we were able to find a piece of property to lease, and we started our grow. I had called up the only thing I knew at the time, and the only it was still, even in 2014, and even though cannabis has been around for so long, and there was a pretty robust industry, with since so at 96 with Prop 215, it was still kind of pretty raw, especially where I'm at. And, people were still a lot of head scratching and a lot of like, what are you doing? But we got our grow and we started that. And then, of course, Prop 64 was introduced, and that's when all the municipalities had to take a stance, right, and say, um, we're going to allow it or not allow it. Fortunately, Monterey County did allow it, but they put a moratorium on all existing business or any new business coming in, and allowed existing businesses to keep moving forward. But what they did is they actually, on the cultivation side, is that they pretty much banned outdoor cultivation, and that
Mm.
was what our bread and butter was outdoor cultivation. So we kind of almost instantly lost that part of what we were doing, which was a drag. But we kept trudging on with the deliveries, and delivery is a tough game. I think, as most delivery people could probably tell you, right? I mean, it's depending on your area. I think you got to be in a really tight, like maybe San Francisco, it works because there's, I don't know, a few million people and a few square miles, where we're much more spread out. But anyway, started the delivery, and started looking for a location to do a retail store, a physical location. And there's not a lot of spots. There were a lot of restrictions and limitations with zoning and things like that. And so we knocked on a lot of doors. Our route got kicked out of a couple offices with earlier with our delivery, because once the landlords found out what we were doing, it was time to go. And currently, the place we're in right now, the landlords, they had told me no a couple times. And then there was another guy that was coming on that was interested in doing the same thing, and we had to go and interview and do all this stuff, and a little hard work and perseverance, and maybe hopefully a little charm with the landlords. I don't know, but they ultimately chose us to occupy the space. And so we were able to um, get the space first. I think I was a little presumptuous at that time, because we hadn't even got the permit yet.
Mm.
But I did get the space, and it was a big deal in Monterey County, because we were actually the very first issued permit in unincorporated Monterey County. There was another dispensary in Delray Oaks, which is a municipality just over the hill here. So we weren't the first ones in Monterey County, but in unincorporated Monterey County, through that process, we were the first permit to be issued. So that's fun. So with that, there was a lot of press, a lot of you know going through the motions at the board of supervisors and the planning commission, and we were heavily involved in that whole process, and trying to be heard for the building of the regulations and all that. And sorry, Brent, I know I'm jumping around a bunch here, but anyway, so here we are now, 10 years later, and still trying to fight the fight.
And now we're on a podcast.
Now we're on a podcast.
So it sounds like you've been through a lot with, moving in and out of state, the brief mention of raids, kind of you have your old buddies, maybe current buddies that are still used to do the thing and still doing the thing and stuff like that. Would you say that things are a little bit more stable for you now, just overall, or do you still feel a little bit of uncertainty with what the future has to hold?
Yeah, I would say right now is actually the most unstable I've felt the whole time.
Interesting. Why is that?
It's I mean, look, you obviously you see the news, read the paper, talk to a lot of people, and Prop 64. In the beginning, you'd hear people say how it was set up to fail, and I say, hey, we're doing pretty good. I'm not. I don't know what are you talking about, and until it loops around and kind of hits you, you're like, oh yeah, well maybe it is set up to make it more difficult. Maybe not to fail, but
Hmm.
definitely more difficult. As I mentioned before, our cultivation side got I guess we got the boot from that early on from the local restrictions, right? And maybe that was a blessing in disguise, considering where how where that's gone. How like a lot of the small mom and pops in every aspect of the industry, but in particular cultivation, have been hit really hard. And it seems like the industry, the rules around the industry were just made for people with deep pockets, and we don't have, I literally started it. We had friends that were, again, it was Prop 215 when we started, so we were still able to source from our friends growing in Big Sur, source from ourselves. We had friends making, concentrates from hash to shatter and all that kind of thing. So our startup was really, a combination of my credit card and some friends, helping us out a little bit, and no backing at all. And the cultivation in Monterey County went really quickly from a lot of our friends and family and people we know growing in Big Sur and the surrounding area, but Big Sur was primarily the hot spot for cultivation. Went from there to, hey, now it's only going to be in greenhouses in the Salinas Valley. And so, imagine the cost to, get that infrastructure going. Then you had to, lease all that land and all that. Which is kind of coming back around to, oversaturation. Um, a lot of, in the beginning, obviously being one of the first one, and then a few kind of coming online. There weren't that many dispensaries, so of course that's going to, make things easier and better. As more and more dispensaries kind of came on, we didn't feel too big of an impact. They were spread out enough, but it just seems like now there's a couple that have gotten closer. You get that little bit of convenience factor for people that did have to come from a certain area coming through. So that all of a sudden, there's a certain percentage of people that not coming into our store. And then, then what's happening now is just, it's the race to the bottom. It's too many dispensaries, and that sounds funny because if you're coming from a grower or a brand's perspective, you're like, hey, there's not enough dispensaries, I'm not getting enough sales, I need more. And that's obviously a result of everything kind of concentrated in so many municipalities not allowing it still. But in some areas like ours, we're getting oversaturated with dispensaries. The market, if you will, as far as the consumer market, it's not necessarily growing, right? So that pie, the pieces just cut up more. And with the taxes, obviously you have to, you have, no matter what, you've got a high tax rate. And taxes are passed on to the consumer, but that just makes the price of the products more, right? And I think most people don't realize, when you got 30% or so or more, give or take, in taxes, you see what the price of your item, you got a $15 eighth, you do the math, you're making, maybe the dispensary's making $1 off of that, but it's tough. So I don't know. I think we're just feeling the pinch of that more, and I'm currently, and I don't mind saying it, but I'm currently in the appeals process with with the CDTFA on their what their interpretation of the law is around taxation. They're taxing
Sorry, the CDTFA is the California.
tax and fee
Okay.
administration. Um, they actually denied my appeal, and I'm filing a second appeal, but it's part of the problem. They're taxing. It's not only are they taxing taxes, but they're taxing compounded taxes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that doesn't help. I mean, my sales tax bill, if you were just to do it off normal sales, would be one number, but because of the way they compound it, my sales tax is actually 20% more than what it should be, right? And so that's part of the problem with why I think it's more difficult, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons, right? But I think really this race to the bottom that a lot of these dispensaries are engaging in, and a lot of them are, some of them are out of desperation. Most of them, I would say, a lot of them, you know, a lot of the local dispensaries aren't local anymore.
Hmm.
They're all getting bought up by the big boys, by corporate entities, and you know, most the consumers don't really know that because the names don't necessarily change, right? So, you know, our big you know, soapbox is always, hey, you know, please try to support independent and locally owned, and you know, we're just here trying to survive. All our money stays in the community, or we're putting our kids to school, all this stuff. But you know, you got these, you know, corporations that are coming in and snatching up the little guys, especially when they get, you know, worn out or desperate, and they get it for pennies on the dollar, and so that doesn't help. But I don't know. I just, again, the race. I'm going to keep saying the race to the bottom because it's just it's sad. It's unfortunate because it doesn't do anybody any good. Our margins are so low already that, you know, um, when you lower the price, when you're doing 40% off, it's like, well, how are, you know, and you have to have a whole hell of a ton of more volume coming through at those reduced margins. And if the volume's not there, you know, you're not only doing your own business a disservice, I think you're doing the brands a disservice. You know, these brands should almost not even allow it. It's like, hey, now people are expecting us to pay, you know, X amount of dollars because that dispensary is giving it to them at 40% off, and they go to another store and they're like, whoa, I don't want to pay those prices, you know, and it just devalues everything, all the way across the board. And I think, you know, and I love a good deal. I can't blame people. You know, and
Who doesn't?
I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
A deal shopper too when it comes to
Yeah.
things, but you know, I try to remind myself when I'm doing that, if it's, look, I don't want to say I shop on Amazon, but it's happened, you know, if it's on, you know, in some cases, maybe you don't feel so bad if you know it's a big corporation or something, but you know, if you know you're shopping at a small mom and pop, like if I have friends that have stores, I don't ask for discounts, you know, because I know
Yeah.
that they're just trying to pay their bills. And if they want to give me one, and, you know, a lot of times, you know, it's, I have friends all the time, I have some friends that, you know, really looking for it, and family too. I've had little bats with my family, like, hey, you know, yeah, I get you stuff, but how about just a little support too, you know? So anyway, it's yeah. So I don't know. I'm feeling it the most right now
Right.
than I have in the last 10 years.
Right, right. So, would you say kind of your biggest challenges just right now, or just the things that are outside of your control, like number of people entering the space, compliance issues, taxing issues, so on and so forth? I mean, like, you know, at least before, if you knew that you can actually do something yourself and change whatever it is, maybe things can get a little bit better, but you can't change the number of competitors getting into the marketplace. You can possibly change compliance and taxation issues. And you're doing it right now with the appeals, but it's not like you can step in and, you know, wave the magic wand and say, hey, don't do this anymore, right? So yeah, completely understand, you know, how difficult things can be on that side. um, on the flip side of those things, though, in terms of the things that you can control, what do you think goes into making a successful dispensary?
Yeah, well, God, great question. I think number one is customer service, right?
Mm-hmm.
Providing an environment that people want to come back to, right? Creating customers that want to stay loyal. You know, a lot of, you know, we get customers that bypass, you know, 15 dispensaries to come to us because of the, you know, for that reason. Even if our prices, you know, maybe they're paying an extra dollar or two, or maybe they're getting a great deal. I mean, that's a misconception of where we're at, that we're in Carmel, so we have higher prices. Where, you know, I mean, I've had, you know, everybody loves Yelp, right, or Google, or whatever, all the where all the reviews are. And, you know, I mean, I've had some of those comments of like, oh, it's so expensive. I'm like, yeah, well, I've got eights for $15 out the door, and eights for $70 out the door, and everything in between. So you know, there's something for everybody. But, you know, trying to figure out what the consumer is really after is a huge challenge. You know, when you get past convenience, right? So location, right, where you know, someone can get too easy, and you get past price, right? Then of course you're going to have customer service. So if your location, you know, maybe, you know, I don't know which one, you know, should go on top, but what I'm noticing now in my previous comments about the challenges and the oversaturation, I'm noticing that price and location are now, and look, we're in sort of a, I don't know if I can cuss on here or not, but we're in a down economy, right? So, with that, people are having to be a little bit more frugal, having to sort of choose, where their money's being spent, which is understandable. So they're looking at, hey, that dispensary down the road's got 40% off that brand, on these days. Well, I'm going to start going there now. Or, hey, I'm going to save, 20 minutes and $5 for just, for the convenience factor. Right. And, so those are things, but I think, ultimately you need to concentrate on customer service to try to battle those, and do your best not to engage in the race to the bottom, because again, all that's going to do is maybe you gain a few more customers, but then your average order value goes down, your margins go down, so it's sort of a lose-lose, right?
But before we get into that, I've realized that after all of these interviews, dispensary owners need a safe space where they can ask the questions that Google doesn't have the answers for. So what I've done is I've created the world's first dispensary owners mastermind group, where it's an environment of like-minded individuals who can help make each other's lives easier and also make more money in the process. So if that's something that you're interested in, please check out the links in the description below. Now on to the rest of the show. Right. So a lot of those things, maybe not for location in terms of the next question that I'm going to bring up, but, kind of customer service. Are you greeting the customers with a smile? Are you recommending them the right products? Somebody comes in for sleep and you give them something that'll keep them up all night. That's obviously not a recipe for customer retention and getting them to keep on coming back. What are some of the strategies that you use? Again, you can go super high level. You don't have to, if you have any secrets, you don't have to share, but, what are kind of the pillars that you focus on to get new customers in through the door?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's no secrets really. I mean, it's it's retail's retail, whether it's you're in the cannabis industry or whatever other type of goods you're in. But it's again, customer service, education, obviously making sure your bud tenders and your staff are highly educated on what they're selling is super important. You touched on that, and that's key, and that was really our focus in the beginning. When we started this, my partner and I were driving around all over the county, and we found that we spent more time. We have an older population here, so we spent more time doing consultations and holding hands and crying on shoulders. And I mean, it was you were dealing with people on the medical side that and that's really when we were doing our deliveries, and even now in the store. I mean, we have a very we have a lot of people that come in for medical reasons, not just recreational, and so I think I got lost on what your original question was, but it was a lot of I guess the education part and the importance of knowing your products and things like that. So we worked with the local the local medical community in the beginning. We had a high emphasis just on that, right, on knowing the products, making the right recommendations, and we still have doctors that will send people our way to have those discussions. Fortunately, I mean, a lot of doctors are starting to educate themselves and kind of get a better understanding now. I mean, in 10 years, it's definitely come a long way, but we still have that. We still concentrate on that here. So I think that helps us out at our store, education of the staff and making the right recommendations to the best that we can. I mean, we're not doctors. We're not, they are just suggestions and recommendations, right? They're everybody's different. Everybody reacts differently. There's all those things. But, again, there's, it's just customer service, and it helps that we are, I'm born and raised here. We're in this area where we have our store, and same my business partner John. He's 12 years older than I am, but he's been here since he was in high school, and so we know a lot of people in the community. I think being engaging in the community. We've done a lot of philanthropy when we could. We've had fires. We would donate to the local fire departments. We would support the Carmel Foundation, which is a place that helps, is a place for seniors. The Hospice Foundation. All these things. We would get engaged with the community, do beach cleanups, right? Just kind of, I joined part of the Carmel Valley Rotary Club.
Nice.
The Rotary clubs. They do a lot of great services, not only locally but internationally, of course. Being part of your chamber, I was on the Chamber of Commerce for a while, and I currently serve on the board of the Monterey County Hospitality Association. So just really engaging with your community and being part of it, I think is, if anybody getting started, that's something that you should do. It can't just be about what's best for you and your business. Hey, how can my business give back and contribute to the community? Is only gonna it's just gonna come full circle in that way, right? And though you shouldn't just do it for those reasons alone. Like I know it makes me feel really good to help where I can, and not just help through cannabis, but just help by giving my time and services.
Right. True feet on the street, you got to get your hands dirty and, actually get out there. You can't just expect to, kind of sit back, lay back, and, people are going to come in. So you mentioned it as well, training up staff. I've done a lot of these interviews, and one of the common, I guess, issues, problems, however way you want to phrase it, is just, kind of dealing with staff, whether it's staff churn, figuring out how to properly incentivize bud tenders, finding the right people. What's your general experience with, building a team and building staff? And, do you have any insights on how to build a good team?
Yeah, so I mean, God, you just have to get lucky. I feel
Yeah,
like, honestly, and maybe not get lucky. I think, get lucky in the beginning, but then, it trickles from the top down, right?
of course.
If you're at the top and you're an ass, well, you're gonna have that's gonna trickle all the way through, and you're gonna have a high rate of turnover, right? I mean,
Yep.
if like you said, getting your hands dirty, I'll show up in the mornings and I'll tear down boxes. I'll vacuum. I'll do what needs to be done. Not all the time, but I mean, again, just you have to share in the duties for sure. Be available. Half my staff. Unfortunately, I've gone from. I think at one point I was around 20 employees. I'm down to about 13 right now, and I think half of my staff right now have been with me since day one, since we opened.
Nice.
I think our store might be the exception and not the rule with the lower rate of turnover. And, I've had great management and I mean, listen, when you're dealing with people and in a workplace, no matter what it is, you got a lot of different personalities, and there's always going to be some sort of internal turmoil, if you will. It's like you almost never get out of high school, no matter how old you get. So that can always be a challenge, making sure that you have. I haven't had to really have too many people let go from here. There's only in I'll say 7 years, maybe there's been 2 that have actually had to have been let go, and others, we try to always promote within when those positions become available. And some people, they hire on when they're kind of young and they sort of cut their teeth a little bit. And I'm always about trying to, like, I want to hold on to the good ones, but I want to see people grow and whether it's within the industry and be able to find other positions at other companies that allow them to continue on their path upward. I encourage that, and we encourage that. But ultimately, you find a place that feels like home, and I think that's what's going to, help you retain your employees more.
Right. Right. So, you said finding a place that's home. Obviously that's a place for you. But what about the future? What do you think the cannabis industry is going to look like in the next foreseeable future, anyways?
Well, I always say when I break out my crystal ball, it's a little bit foggy.
Mine's foggy as well. Trust me. I've tried to bust out my crystal ball and been wrong a bunch of times.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, the future is very uncertain for sure. I do hope. It's look, a lot of the information we get. We have to rely on the papers and the news, and maybe have some inside information with people that are working close to the government agencies and what have you. But I mean, look, if we're talking, generally speaking, I mean, this whole reschedule, deschedule deal, right? I mean, that would be great to see some
Mm-hmm.
movement there. Although the paper yesterday, I think, had some. Again, now you got. I don't know if it's Congress. Someone's trying to block it again, and it's just like
Yeah.
it's just madness to me. Honestly, the hypocrisy of how cannabis is treated compared to other industries, it just blows my mind still every day. I can't believe where we're at still sometimes. At the same time, we've come so far, I guess, right?
Yeah.
You look at it. Someone said to me recently, they said, oh, look, you go back not quite 100 years, I guess 90 years ago, into the 30s with alcohol prohibition and, where that was at. I mean, it took gangsters and guys shooting places up, I guess, to get that change. I mean, that's not going to happen here, but eventually that did change. I'm not going to say for the better. I mean, alcohol is one of those things. I mean, you should really flip, the way things are viewed between alcohol and cannabis. They should be flopped, right? I mean, alcohol should be scheduled and not there's no medical value. Maybe back in the 1800s when you had to drink to pull the bullet out or something, right? And not feel the pain. But
Exactly.
I mean, look, I'm preaching to the choir here on that. It's so anyway, that on the legal part, it would be great to see that happen. I think it will happen eventually. We're in a weird political year. Who knows what's going to happen between our candidates? It's like a bad Alfred Hitchcock movie, right? It's just looping back, and we're back in the same position. I think the normalization of cannabis is going to help, and we're seeing that as more states do legalize and go even if it's just medically, but slowly pull into into adult use legalization. That's going to get the feds a little bit more online. But who knows? I mean, it's like I'm surprised it's taken this long. But then but again, then hey, we're already getting this far. So that'll be good. Locally, I'm working on actually trying to get our county to allow consumption, right? Consumption spaces. I think that's a huge need in every community, right? A safe place that you can go and interact with people and enjoy your favorite cannabis products. It's again, if you make the comparison to alcohol, there's bars and restaurants that serve alcohol on every corner, and there's no place for you to go enjoy your favorite cannabis flower or other cannabis product. Drinks obviously are well on the rise, and I think I've seen some late statistics lately that show that cannabis use is definitely having an impact on alcohol use, right? And less people drinking and more people kind of consuming cannabis. So that's a positive sign. But for us, I think we're going to work on trying to get this our county to allow consumption, and I think from a store perspective, depends on I mean, there's so many different ways. You could have just a little smoke den that a lot of them are, or you create kind of like they're doing down in I think in Vegas and West Hollywood and places like that, right? They're really making it more of a hospitality venue, right? More of a hopefully we get the again back to laws. Hopefully our governor doesn't veto this next bill that's going to allow for more cannabis consumption cafes, right, where you can have non-infused food and beverage, made on site, and sort of just kind of normalize that whole process. So, I think that I hope to see the future have more of that, right? Just squash the fears. I mean, they're coming in here and lighting it up somewhere outside here anyway. So, all the arguments that go against that, like, oh, now everyone's going to be high driving on the streets and things like that. It's like, well, what do you think they're doing already? They just, now we have create places where you can educate around that kind of thing, where you can, um, provide a safe spot. Maybe they take a ride share from wherever you're at, and maybe actually take more people off the roads that are consuming, right? So,
Right, right. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, literally the last guest I interviewed pretty much said the exact same thing that you said, right? Like, if we're talking about, mortality rates and stuff like that with consumption compared to alcohol, right? It seems obvious, right? There's a lot of uncertainty now, this recession, price compression, competition, whatever it is. But I try, and if you can zoom out a little bit from the macro, again, not too long ago, it was just fully illegal, right? And you and I both know how fast the governments go. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, snail's pace, right? So at the end of the day, I'm optimistic, and I think as long as we're trending in the right direction, at least it's a positive direction. Rescheduling, descheduling, federal legalization, whatever it is, right? Um, the conversations are being had at this point in time, right? So I try to put on my optimistic hat, because realistically, if you don't have it on, then it makes for a very tough outlook to continue putting one step in front of the other,
yeah, well said.
So, on that note, what advice would you give to yourself if you were to start all over again?
Wow, what advice would I give? I just stay strong, stay true to who you are. Don't compromise on it, your integrity, and just stay the course. I mean, that's kind of, I think that's what I've done. I think I would give myself the same advice of the practices that I held true to, kind of, through this whole process, and even to now. And I mean, that's really the best thing you can do. I mean, we got approached, and obviously in the beginning, by a lot of different, of these corporations wanting to have us fall in line with them, or you hear of other practices that maybe aren't so up and up, and if you want to sleep good at night, just follow the rules. Don't try to be a gunslinger, and just stick to the wild west, right? I mean, again, there are good actors and bad actors. We've seen some of them kind of get outed, and that doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help the industry. Obviously, didn't help them. So, just do your best to be involved. And again, actually, when I go back and I look at everything that I've done up until this point, I wouldn't change a thing. There's nothing that I would look back and want to do differently. Would I want some of the rules to be different? Would I want to be allowed to still, kind of grow our own and do that kind of thing? Absolutely, right? Would I want there to be lesser taxes? Absolutely. Would I want some of the local government's rules to have not changed? Absolutely, right. But as far as what I did personally, uh, I wouldn't change a thing. So.
For sure, for sure. So to finish off the last little bit of our segment, we have a little section where we ask the previous guest that I've interviewed what question do they have for the next guest, and then you can go ahead and ask the next guest whatever question you would like to. So the question from the previous guest is. How much cannabis do you consume? What does your consumption pattern look like as you've grown the business? So a little bit of context to the question is we're kind of at a little crossroads of business owners, productivity, efficiency, running a business and trying to make things work. And then you have your consumption, which, for the most part, most people don't operate at 100% peak performance all the time. So kind of like as a business owner and presumably as someone who used to consume back in the day recreationally, how has your consumption kind of changed over time, or has it at all?
Yeah, so I mean that's a fun question actually. I throughout my life, whether I was in, well before this, I've always taken little breaks. I mean, I've been consuming cannabis since I was 12 years old. I'll just, so, I've got 40 years of cannabis consumption. So, I look back, on times, it's funny. We highlight cannabis as a great stress reliever. And I think that can definitely be the case for most people. In other cases, if it stimulates your brain activity and gets you thinking a lot, during stressful times, it can maybe not be the best choice, right?
You start ruminating inside your head a little bit.
And I find that with me, when life is feeling good and I'm relaxed and home is good, everybody's healthy, things are just, everything is in sort of a kumbaya state. I love nothing better than a nice pre-roll, and that is my, I don't think that was part of the question, but my favorite form of consumption is our cannabis joints.
Mm-hmm.
I say pre-roll just as because it's easy to say, but primarily I'm still just an old school,
Just roll.
roller or anything. I actually roll my own joints.
Yeah.
And my smoking habits, I don't smoke during the day. I don't, my cognitive ability to multitask does get affected. Although I've had management that, and family members that it's actually the opposite, where, they consume that it really kind of just helps them, right? It helps them focus, helps them move forward. So again,
It's their caffeine.
with it, right? But my habits are still, look, when I love, after work, I'll go home, and if I'm feeling relaxed and happy, I go outside and take a couple puffs off my joint and call it good. And so I still do that, and still, still enjoy the finer flavors of all the great quality cannabis that's being produced these days.
Nice, nice. And what question would you have for the next guest that we interview?
Yeah, God, the next that what question? Why? No, why? Why?
Why are you putting yourself through this torture? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, right. I that's that. Honestly, I guess. I mean, you've asked all the great questions, really, on what I would be interested in knowing. But I guess I'm going to not go too far out of the box, kind of cheat here a little bit, but just say, they asked what what the consumption habits were. I'm just going to say simple, like what's your what is your favorite category? I guess, are you a flower person, a edible person, and why?
Sure. All right. Perfect. All right. I'll make a note, and then we'll ask the next guest that hops on. Cool. So what's next in store for you over the next months, years? Again, however far your crystal ball shows.
Yeah, well, like I said, so currently I am working on, getting our county to allow for on-site consumption. I brought that forward to our district supervisor about 2.5 years ago, and sort of let things, I didn't want to be too pushy, so I let things kind of go for a while. And recently I brought that back up sort of the end of last year to the powers that be in our county, and got that back on the docket, if you will. And we actually got it all the way back to the Board of Supervisors in March. I think it was March. And they, agreed to see this thing moved forward. So they've instructed the local staff to start drafting that ordinance. So we are in that stage right now where they're working on what the rules around cannabis consumption lounges would be, and And so we're hoping that that is the next phase.
Nice. And then lastly, where can people find you / the store if they want to get in touch?
Big Sur Cana Botanicals. We're located, at 26352 Carmel Rancho Lane in Carmel, California. It's right off Highway 1, right before you head down to Big Sur. So we're kind of like the last shopping center before you hit the road down to go Point Lobos and beyond into Big Sur. So.
Perfect. Well, Aram, thank you so much for taking the time out your day for hopping on the show. Again, after all these interviews, I really can tell that the dispensary owners, everyone, you're wearing all these hats, you're putting fires out, putting one foot in front of the other. But it just seems like all the challenges that you've been able to overcome in the past has kind of built you into this figure that's unstoppable. I don't know if you watch X-Men, but the juggernaut that kind of keeps on walking through everything, walking through walls and stuff like that. And yeah, so I really appreciate you taking out the time, because I know how busy you can be and stuff like that. But for everyone else who's watching, that's it. My name is Brandon, the host of the Dispensary Marketing Podcast and the founder of Cannabud Marketing. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dispensary Marketing Podcast. My name's Brandon Kwan, and I'm the founder of Cannabud Marketing, the #1 marketing agency of choice for dispensaries, both in the United States and in Canada. If you ever want to get in touch with me about any marketing strategies, tips, and tricks, I can definitely help you. Just go visit our website at cannabudmarketing.com. That's CANNABUD marketing.com, or just check the links in the description below. Until next time, talk to you later. Bye.